yourselves if you want to.
Okay, good morning. I'm Rex Barnhill at Barnhill Orchards, and we're interviewing down here in the Grape High Tunnel, a little experiment by the U of A, and Dr. Garcia here is with me. And tell us your credentials.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your farm.
Oh, I'm a fruit and vegetable farm, and raise quite a bit of different types of fruit, and peaches and blackberries and blueberries and grapes, of course, and got a few persimmons and this, that, and the other, and blackberries, and supplement all that with a lot of other vegetables, and strawberry or tomatoes, watermelons, cucumbers, cantaloupe, the whole 9 yards. But if you can raise it here, I pretty well do it. And we're here in central Arkansas, maybe 20 miles east of Little Rock and maybe 5 miles north. And I don't know. I've been doing it for maybe 35 years now, and I had a little spare tunnel here that I'd constructed about 5 years ago, and we thought we'd try a little grape experiment, and it went pretty well. We actually produced some fruit, and which we'll go over later about the profitability of it.
Hello, I'm Elena Garcia. I'm a professor in the horticulture department, and my specialty is working with fruits. And in about 2016, I had brought Rex some leftover strawberry plants, I remember, and I realized he had constructed this multi-bay series of tunnels, and so we started talking, and Rex asked me if I kind of thought of a perennial crop that he could grow in the tunnel. And at that time, we were just beginning to talk about writing a grant to grow grapes, because I had them in Fayetteville. But when I brought the idea to Rex, he was all enthusiastic about it, and I want to thank him for letting us have a project in his place. You can see here the whole tunnel is occupied with grapes. And so we've been able to do, we planted this tunnel in 2017. So we harvested fruit in 2018, in 2019. And so I have 2 graduate students that have been working in this tunnel. So we have gotten a lot of research and education materials with this project. Particularly, again, this is one thing is to do research at a research facility where you have a lot of things under control, and another thing is to actually do it on farm, because then the farmer has a lot more things to contribute and to say to you that how things need to be done and that kind of thing. So I'm very thankful that Rex was willing to let us do that. Anything to add?
Well, I want to commend you for bringing down so many students that are interested in agri. I was impressed. It's hard to find anybody.
Yeah.
And some of them were interested in other agri areas, yeah. But you had plenty of help, and they were pretty well motivated, and worked out pretty good for them.
Great. And, so let me start. So from your perspective, what are some of the benefits for growing table grapes under tunnel?
Well, I would reckon that you're keeping the moisture off the plant, and of course the downside is they grew a heck of a lot of vegetation, and it was hard to keep the fruit clean. And if it wasn't for the coons and the possums, I think we would have had a real good crop. So I need to do a little better job of keeping them out of there. But to me, the fruit looked a lot better. Maybe 30 years ago, I'd been raising some out in the open, and I didn't have too much trouble with varmints, but these were a lot more productive, and y'all were managing a lot more proper, and so many clusters per vine, and a little more science to it rather than whatever grew was fine with me. But no, what'd you see?
as far as the benefits, like you already mentioned yield, and overall, we have at least a third, if not half, more yield than outside. And the other thing that you brought up was the quality. There's definitely, in a year like this year, where it rained a lot, so outside grapes did not look well at all. I mean, it was if I were a grower growing outside field grapes, I would have had a total loss. Where in the tunnel, the humidity was high and problems developed, but we still had a pretty good harvest. So yield and fruit quality are the top. Another one is that we can reduce the amount of pesticides that we're using in comparison to what is used outside. Again, particularly something that you mentioned is it doesn't rain in here. So we have, the fruit is drier than outside. So those are some of the benefits. As far as, what surprised you the most about this project?
Well, I guess your enthusiasm, I mean, and the participation in it. And I mean, y'all were here every 2 weeks at least, and coming down to check on them and doing something else with them a little bit. And I thought it might have been a little overkill, but obviously it wasn't. Didn't bring enough help, but anyway, I guess I was a little skeptical about it. I figured it was going to be too hot in here, which it is. You see I'm sweating pretty good, just standing here in the morning.
Yes, but it's going to be 93 degrees here, so they're outside.
But y'all had a problem being so far away. It'd be better to come down here and work early. And the best part is there's no dew on the plants, so you get rid of that moisture issue with fungus, and that's not really a problem. The problem is that with being out or in the cover is we can't get a very good job on herbicide business. Everything has to be post applied after it comes up, because you can't get it activated.
Right.
And that's a little bit of an issue, and plus the vines being down there, it really limits me to what I can spray. I can spray a grass, but if it's a broadleaf, I'm hoeing. And which ain't a bad thing. You come in every 2 weeks and do it, and you can keep her pretty clean.
What other difficulties did you see? Did you encounter, or?
Well, I guess I had a little bit of rodent issues, biting the water lines and that, and other than excessive growth.
Yeah.
And because you better schedule your work time in the early morning or very late in the evening for the heat issue. It just builds up under the plastic here. And we talked about maybe putting a row cover over the top, a shade cloth. But we figured that was going to cut down on the sugars, growing them in the shade. And which that may be an okay thing if it's a passable. Maybe next time we'll cover half of it and give it a try.
Give it a try.
And but it's just been notoriously hot this summer.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So what do you have insect or disease problems in here that you can think of?
Well, we had some aphids, I think there was. And maybe a little bit of spider mite in it. And it was later on. I think your sprays were controlling it. I was picking some of the later varieties, and their honeydew was soiling the fruit. But I managed to pick through it and clean it up a little bit, and still sell it. And but like I said, what surprised me really was the size of the clusters. They were almost Chilean. They were so big.
Okay, we were talking about difficulties. I think one of the, which is not just a tonal difficulty, it's field production, but last year we had a pretty serious problem with sour rot, and I think our spray schedule was not taking care of it. But then this year we kind of learned our lesson, and we did do a more concentrated spray, pesticide effort, and for the most part, it was a much better year. We did not have that much sour rot. There were some, especially on the bunches that are underneath the canopy where there was no good air circulation. But overall, I think this year was a much better year for production.
Yeah, we got to give Mike a kudos on that.
Yeah.
He got after it, got in his suit and sweated. And it was a rough year for him.
Mike is Dr. Jackie Lee's technician that was coming in to spray. So yeah, he did a really good job. This project, let me interject here, is a multidisciplinary project, multidisciplinary approach. We have entomologists, plant pathologists, economists, education, horticulturists. So everybody was kind of looking at this and going, okay, what can I do? What can I contribute? So that's why I think it was a pretty successful project.
Right. Well, anyway, we need to come up with a better way of spraying. The backpack is great. I mean, it's good. I mean, it wasn't quite adequate, but it needs to be more of a blast sprayer. Mm-hmm. And I mean, where you can blow it up in there, right? Because he'd be coming by spraying, you know, and just hitting leaves. Mm-hmm. And there'd be a spot that was blocked, you know, at the fruit, and unless you get really going back and forth, but I mean, you got to use what you got, and so we're going to come up with a different and blow it up from underneath. You know, you can get a better shot at it, and anyway, that'd be on me next year, okay. Obviously, to come up with something. Okay. And to do that, you've got to keep the center aisle clear, and you can kind of look down there. It's thick. That people are growing back and forth, and like I said, you got to keep one vine out of another vine's territory, or else you're taking away from his yield next year. He's getting shaded out or whatever. So a little bit more summer pruning is going to be necessary to make this come off right. And I mean, you do that out in the open anyway, But I like I said, I didn't do too much down here. It's all the state business. I tried not to get too involved, but I would come down and do a few things while they were gone.
Appreciated that. So. Anyway, we have 4 cultivars or varieties here, and so they are Jupiter, Hope, a few Gratitude, and a few Neptune. On a personal level, which was the one you liked the best, but on a commercial, were you able to, which one was you think your customers like better?
Well, I like the Jupiter. And they had a little trouble with ripening the cluster all at once. But it to me, it's got a little more flavor. And it looks kind of like a Chilean grape. You know, it's got color. The white ones, they had good size, and they tasted good. But I think a customer's more attracted to color, than they are, you know, to a white grape. And they think, oh, white grape's just a white grape. And but they all ate real well. And I really, you know, once you got a grape in somebody's mouth, yeah, I want that. And it was a customer preference. They like color, just like peaches. If it is not good and red, they don't want a yellow one. But then once you get them to eating it, well, I'll take that. But another issue, I guess we're not talking about sales yet.
Well, I mean, we could. I mean, it's up to you. Let's go ahead and talk about it. We can come back.
Okay. Other than having to pick the bad grapes out, you know, I mean, some clusters were perfect. And probably 50% of them were. The other ones you actually had to either cut the bottom out or you know, or clean them up a little bit. And I pretty well retailed them all to farmers market and my market down here on the farm. and it went well, like I said. But you know, after the Jupiters were gone, you know, once you get them started in, you know, 10 days or so, it's over. So that's a problem. You know, you got to have a continuous supply, and then you break them, and then you start with a new variety a little bit later. That pretty much all the white green grapes came off at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing. And you know, I just come down and pick, and they held good.
Good.
You know,
Yeah.
on the vine. So I wasn't worried about getting them all out at one time, because I'd have a hard time moving that many. Which you might relieve me about what the data on the yields were, but because I think you came through and picked all the Jupiters, because they were starting to have an issue with the sour
Yeah.
rot, or
Yeah. Yeah.
and but you'd think the first ones out wouldn't have as much problem with disease.
I think this year with Jupiter, and that was across Clarksville, Fayetteville, there was a big issue trying to develop the color. You know, remember they were kind of greenish.
Yeah, it
So,
was, you know, sometimes I would leave the thumb on there. Because you know, it seems like that's the last part, the color up.
Yeah.
And
So you said you didn't have trouble moving them in your.
I sold all I picked. So it wasn't too much of an issue. I had problems when you picked me 30 trays of Jupiter, you know, but of course they weren't quite all the way ripe
Right,
at
but
that
we had-
time.
yeah.
And you know, if I was doing it, I would pick the ripe ones first. But you were just getting rid of the bad guys. you
Yeah.
know.
And as you say, we're having to come from Fayetteville, so that's a long drive, and so trying to get as much with done as we could. Yeah, but you know,
Yeah,
once-
you need to have a local scout down here. Someone that lives little, you know, one of these Little Rock guys to keep you advised. But they came out, you know. Amanda was here a time or two, and her crowd.
Yeah, like I said, this is a collaborative effort, and so we all work really well together and have a head. So this project is going to end. The funding is going to end at the end at the end of March of next year. Are you going to continue working? Are you going to keep these grapevines, or what are your general plans?
Well, I intend to, and there's no need to pull them out. They're income generating. It just needs a little more input, and to get the maximum output out of it. And I don't know too much about, you know, the different trellising systems that we put in here as to why, or, you know, we put a flat one here and a terraced one on the outsides, and that was basically trying to keep them away from the heat.
And also to accommodate the structure of the tunnel, so we could get the maximum amount of surface area filled.
So I think we got plenty of sunlight,
Yeah, yeah.
and considering the growth and compared to the outside ones, you know, we had some issues there with winter kill and a few other things. And that was another issue in here. The first winter was the first frost went down to 26 degrees, and they were just green as gourds, and that really killed a lot of the vine. Some of them all the way back to the root, and they come back, but
Yeah, set them behind.
we had an early, you know, it wasn't really an early frost, but it was warm right up to it. The front come through, and all of a sudden, whoop, it was all over. The next day, every leaf fell.
And that's too sudden, and that's kind of a concern that I have of, you know, growing grapes in this area in a tunnel, is that they stay green and growing until there's a freeze, and that freeze can come, especially for young vines. I think these older vines, they can adjust a lot better than the younger vines.
That was just a little setback.
Yeah, a little setback. We replanted, and yeah. Okay, so since you say you're gonna keep it, so what kind of general changes are you going to be making?
Well, I'm going to try to keep the vines cut up a little bit. All the trailing vines on the ground, and ground contact's not really a good thing. But and try to keep them pruned a little bit more. You know, they need so many leaves to put the sugars in the thing, but the leaves on the ground, and there's no, you don't see any vines moving around in here. The wind's not being able to work in here, so we keep it down low, get it cleared, and that way I can also work on excess growth of stuff on the ground, weeds, and nutrient and water stealers,
Okay.
and perhaps clean a little bit more of the leaf and stuff around the clusters. I had a lot of trouble with leaves growing through the clusters.
Yeah, I noticed
You know,
that.
it just takes one walk through to clean all that up. And because when you're picking and you cut a cluster and pull it out, and then the leaf pulls through it, and half a dozen grapes fall off, and there's not much need for that. There's just one pass through there, you can kind of clean that up. And make sure the clusters are hanging. I mean, they got to hang by themselves, not touching anybody else, and that's part of cluster cleaning, you know, and counting, and other than that, they're going to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't have too much time to throw at them, but I can come down here every 2 weeks and run through here and straighten it out. Because it just takes a little bit of attention, and you can have a decent harvest.
Well, if I were a new grower coming to you and saying, would it be cost effective for me to build a tunnel to grow grapes, or would you tell me, don't do it, it's too much work, too expensive?
Well, it's going to cost you probably $5,000 to $7,000 just to make a one hoop structure, and that might be hard to recoup. But if you already had it, like I did, and I didn't bear very much of the expense, other than putting it in, and. But anyway, like I said, I don't have privy to the data of what was harvested or what was possible. It looked like it was a lot.
Yes, like
to
I
me.
said, probably on the range of about 30 to 50 pounds per vine, which is very, very high.
You know,
and
of course, that relate to what are you selling it for?
Right.
And I'm pretty much at $2 a pound. And so you're talking, you know, anywhere 75, basically averagely $75 a plant. But you know, a plant's taking up maybe 64 square feet in here.
Yeah. So that's.
So now we're down to maybe $1, $1.50 per square foot, and that's probably not a good economically viable.
And we are working on the economics, so we'll let you know what we're considering the investment into the tunnel, everything that goes into getting a vineyard, the trellis systems, everything. So we will know more about that. We're going to try to get like a break-even point to, you know, say if you build a tunnel, put grapes, when is your break-even point what year do you get to that point? Because as you're saying, building a tunnel is going to be $5,000 to $10,000 per tunnel, depending on the size, and so, yeah.
But like I said, I didn't bear other than the tunnel costs, the infrastructure here to hold the vines up, and but anyway, it would be silly for me to take it out. I mean, for me, it's a viable thing. It comes off when other fruits are not available. You know, and then running a produce stand, fruit is king. Any type of fruit that you can have there, and it was a welcome thing.
And so that goes back, you already talked about it, but how do you sell most of your fruit here? How do you sell the grapes?
I pretty much put them in, basically you put them in a quart or a French fry tray or whatever you want to sell out of. And laying them out where they can see the whole cluster is a lot better than stuffing them in a quart. You know, some of them clusters wouldn't fit in a quart to start with. They were that big. So you lay them out on a French fry tray, you know, a little plastic serving tray, and they were really attractive. And long as they were clean, there wasn't any bad guys in there. You know, they'll pass up the clusters because they can see one bad one in there. So you really had to get your tweezers out and pick out the bad ones. And but they, like I said, they weren't an item that people come to your market to buy. It was just an impulse item to buy, and they went well with everything else. I mean, everybody wants to go home with some fruit. You know, vegetables are just so good.
Do you think that as you keep grapes being available to consumers, that desire to come and get grapes from you, it's going to increase, or I mean?
Well, that might could be. You know, I've got a pretty loyal fan base, and you get them used to it, and then I'm sure that will come.
Yeah. Okay.
And they'd come back asking for them. Where's them grapes? And I said, well, you know, you got to keep coming. In 10 days they're done. And that might be an issue. You know, just stagger them out. You know, your production, but the longer they're in here, the more input you're giving them. And but the object of making money is get in early and stay long. And they did good. I mean, we had maybe a 5-week window between the Jupiter and the very ones on the end. And although I did take some to the fair. They were in the second week of September, third week, but I should have saved some. I could have won grand champion. But I wasn't thinking about that. I'd come back in here and scrap and find them.
It was probably Gratitude or Neptune that you took, right?
Yep.
White grape.
They like I said, they were big clusters, and I mean you couldn't hardly put your hands around them, and they were long and they were nice.
Yeah. Well, overall, how do you feel, or what is your opinion if another research from the university, from the division comes and asks you if you would collaborate with them? Was your experience with us positive enough that you can say, yeah, let me look at that and study it, or will you go, no, we're not?
No, I'm very happy with y'all coming and trying and doing your thing. I learned a lot from this, and you know, I know this wasn't your expertise per se, and I know y'all studied up on it and got your students all boned up on what to do, and but it for y'all, it's not about, you know, the product. It's about the process.
Yes, exactly.
You know, I had to stand back and I realized, well, y'all here to teach these students how to do a project. Yes. And then, you know, and sometimes it's better to fail and then go back and start thinking it over again about what do we need to do different and try something new, you know, and that's what makes the world turn, is ideas.
Yeah, and that was something, because we do have graduate students. They have to have like 2-3 years worth of data the same. So we could not come in and just change the procedure overnight and go, oh, we're going to be doing this, because that would have affected how they write their thesis, or, you know. So yeah, there were some limitations with us trying to do this research, and a grower, you know, kind of, you probably have heard me say this before, but we as researchers, we grow fruit with money because we get grants to do the work. You grow fruit for money because your livelihood depends on that.
Right.
So just based on that, there's going to be kind of a little bit of a tug of war as to what's going on. But I feel we worked really well together, and I appreciate you definitely letting us put this big project here and working with us, and so yeah.
Well, one other gripe.
Okay.
I mean, this is because y'all have to have the random pattern.
Yes.
To replicate, and to me,
Yes.
I'd rather put everything, all one variety in one row, as it is. When I come out here to pick, I got to travel up and down the row and,
Yes.
and look for, well, at least you're keeping them labeled. It's like,
Yes,
hey, I'm
yeah.
looking for the yellow tag.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and we do have to randomize. I mean, that's part of the experiment. So.
And whether, the center of the tunnel, like I said, well, you haven't got that data all crunched yet about, what the production was down the tunnel.
Yeah, down the tunnel. Yeah, and we
on
will
the
have all
ends
that
and
information.
in the middle,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's to come.
Okay.
Them
Yeah.
graduate students going to be crunching numbers.
Yeah, they are. They are already in the process.
But like I said, this is a process for them to learn, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's all about data and analyzing your data and building a better mousetrap.
You got it.